Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Friend, beloved God,
Friend, Beloved God,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
our beloved Gurudeva,
our beloved Gurudeva,
Paramahansa Yoganandaji,
Paramahansa Yoganandaji,
saints of all religions,
saints of all religions,
we humbly bow before all of you.
we humbly bow before all of you.
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
help us to rise above all fear,
help us to rise above all fear,
to realize that this life
to realize that this life
has for its sole purpose
has for its sole purpose
our reunification with Thee,
our reunification with Thee,
soul to soul,
soul to soul,
that all that happens in this world
that all that happens in this world
is pure delusion.
is pure delusion.
And as we free our hearts,
And as we free our hearts,
we will once again
we will once again
be able to feel your pure love.
be able to feel your pure love.
Help us to find the courage
Help us to find the courage
to face the truth,
to face the truth,
to live in your light.
to live in your light.
Om,
Om,
peace. Amen.
This is a chant written by Yoganandaji that is not often heard. He recommended this as an antidote for the fear of death. Whence do they
Let's take even just the last two lines of that beautiful chant, so evocative of our deep love for God. When my dream's dream is done, she will lift me on her lap. And let's go into this brief meditation, imagining ourselves being lifted by God herself, lifted onto her lap and held there in that lap of safety, of pure love, just with no question, no fear, no doubt, because we are with God again. And let's meditate for about 10 minutes. Om, peace, amen.
If you know the words to this song, you're welcome to sing along with us. Though green summer fade and winter draw near, my Lord, in your presence I live without fear. Through tempest, through snows, through turbulent tides, the touch of your hand is my strength and my guide. I ask for no riches that death can destroy. I crave only thee, your love and your joy. I ask for no riches that death can destroy. I crave only thee, your love and your joy. The dances will pass, the singing must end. I welcome the darkness with you for my friend.
Great. Okay. Can you hear me? Good. Okay. I'm going to take these off for now anyway. So here we are. Swamiji saved the best for the last, didn't he? Tonight's secret is the secret of overcoming the fear of death. Ormilla, and if you sit there, I can look at you while I look at the camera. Is that okay? Rearranging the live audience here. Psychologists would tell us that no matter what we think we're afraid of in life, ultimately it's death that we're afraid of, and they could trace everything back to the fear of death. And I've always understood that there is some way where that's true, that loss of sense of self, no matter what we talk about with fear, it's an easy sort of jump to make or link to make or correlation, I could say. But in some other way, today I was thinking about it, I realized, no, we could really be afraid in a moment, at a very superficial level anyway, of making a fool of ourselves. Last week we talked about the fear of failure and what that's like. So I think in the as life goes and the subtlety of life, it's sometimes good to separate them. But ultimately, and it is true that an absolutely universal fear is the fear of death. I'm smiling because just today, somehow there were two friends over at my house, and somehow we got into talking about spiders. Why were we talking about it? I can't remember. But anyway, we reached describing the biggest spiders we've ever seen in our lives and the help we've needed to call for, things like that. And then this friend looked at me and he said to me, why do you think it is that people are universally afraid of spiders? And that just popped into my mind. I think it's probably pretty true, at least the spiders we were talking about. So I guess there's a lot of universal fears, but the fear of death is certainly one of them. I've always felt very grateful, in a way, that I've been exposed to death as much as I have been. And I was realizing, as I was sitting with this topic, that there is something to seeing this play of consciousness in this physical world, consciousness in the spirit world, that which is form and unchangeable, and that which is the soul of it, and eternally changing, or fluid, I would say, much more fluid than the fixed state, this body, this person, this singular experience. It's almost like being imprisoned in something as opposed to being free and expansive and a part of everything, which all of us would know we feel, even in a deep meditation, even in those moments where, and there are moments in our life where we actually forget about the body, and maybe most importantly, we forget about the breath. Even if we're not aware of ever having been breathless, when we're in a deep meditation and there's no thought of the breath, it brings that deep inner calm and a true deep sense of being connected to everything. We don't always think it through like that. And again, it doesn't need to be a state of samadhi. It can truthfully be that very deep meditation where we go beyond form. And for those of you who have been there in meditation, you know exactly what I'm speaking about. So there is something very freeing about even imagining shedding this body, and yet there's so much fear that's associated with it. When I think I was exposed to death at very young ages. My father died when I was 14, and that just started a huge series of people either being dead or me watching them die. Somehow I've had more experience with that than many people have. But when I went into nursing and then medical school, it became a very common experience. I was an intensive care unit nurse. Many of you have heard me tell the story of the man who died and I didn't know this could happen. I wasn't waiting for it. He actually sort of got my attention, but I'll just tell a short version, but you remember it. We were resuscitating him, and I look up in the corner of the room and I see him. And he's as alive to me as he was the night before when I was talking with him. You remember, many of you, the story, the doctors, I was a nurse at the time, the doctors wanted to stop the resuscitation, and I just knew we couldn't stop because I was looking at him up there. Now, I didn't know anything. Nobody spoke about what are called near-death experiences, or people just leaving their body, all of what's so common for me to think of now. But at the time, I knew nothing of it. But that experience, which happened when I was around 21, so what is that, 53 years ago, I honestly remember it like it happened last night. It was such a clear and vivid moment and experience, and it changed my whole notion of what dying meant, because so many times that night, the doctors wanted to stop the resuscitation. And if we did, he would be gone. But instead, he lived. It was, you remember I called my mother when the whole experience was over. It was about 1:30 in the morning, because I was young, and I was still in that moment where I would call my mother first when something happened. And I remember I said to her, "Mom, I have no idea what this life is about, but it's not what we think. It's not what we've always thought it is," because I had no way of putting words to that experience. I remember, I'm telling you a few of these stories because it's meaningful to the subject matter tonight. When I was in medical school, which was after that experience, I had two very vivid experiences that would be the next experiences in shaping my deep understanding and of death and a lessening of fear of it. The first happened when we were in our second or third year of medical school. Now, as I think of it, I think it must have been our third year. I had been a nurse for all those years. Everybody knew it. So a very dear friend of mine came to me and said to me, "I have a patient who I think is dying, but he's afraid and I'm afraid and I don't know what to do." We were third year medical students. We didn't know anything, really, except I did, because I'd been an intensive care unit nurse for years, and I mean, who knows? I was probably a doctor or a nurse or a paramedic or something in many past lives. So I went to see this older man with her, and he was, there's actually a medical term for it, but I can't remember it right now. But he was struggling in his body. He was conscious, he was with us, not quite alert, but he was restless and agitated. And so I said to my friend, who was a third year medical student, but seemingly in charge of the case, I said, "Why don't you have the nurses give him some morphine?" But then more important than that, I said to her, "Stay here with me." And I just put my hand on his arm, and I remember his name was Jonathan. And I said to him, "John, it's okay for you to leave. Nothing will happen when you leave. You can just decide to be calm. We'll help you with that with a little bit of medicine. Your family has all said goodbye to you now, and you should go. It's time for you to go. You will be more comfortable after you leave." I don't know where those words came from, but we gave him just a touch of morphine, And within minutes, he left. And it was, as those moments go, a very peaceful leaving. They're not always like that. But it totally changed the experience that my friend then had also of being around people who were so sick and dying. And it changed me because now it was the next time that I watched somebody leave, and it wasn't as horrifying as everything that I had always heard about death, which is, I think, how most of us, at least in the West, hear about death. Now, I will tell you that Eastern teachings are different, but I've been around a lot of people from the East, and I have to say many of them are equally terrified of dying. They may have had these teachings, otherwise they may speak more about the soul, but actually, at least for many of them, when the moment comes, or they get a cancer, or whatever happens, we're all sharing the nature of this human condition, which tells us, hold on, this is what we need to do. We need to live as long as we can. We carry with us a deep fear of dying. And I'll tell you what Master said about that in a moment, but the last experience that I'll share is, I don't remember where I was. I was in medical school, or I could have been in my first year of training now as an intern. But there was a young boy who had advanced stages of cardiac disease. He was in his 20s, and I had been taking care of him, and we just adored each other. But he was very sick. I mean, often he couldn't speak much because he was so short of breath, and he was waiting for a heart transplant. He and I would pray together every day when I would come and see him. We were praying for a heart. I was his cheerleader. And one day when I just happened to be at the bedside, I'm sure it wasn't, it just happened to, but it looked that way. And he had a cardiac arrest. And the same thing happened, but in a very different way. So he had a cardiac arrest. Everybody from the hospital comes running. You've all seen it on television. It's very much like that. And he kept speaking to me. I didn't see him, but he kept saying to me, I hadn't changed my name to Shanti yet. And so he kept saying to me, Sally, I'm right here. I haven't gone anywhere. And so I'm looking at his body there, but he's talking to me. And I'm a medical student, so I'm sort of the peon, if you know the word, really. But I just got so strong. And I'm saying to everybody, we have to bring him back, we have to. And he's here kind of giggling. He was just giggling. He was perfectly okay. Anyway, we did bring him back, and he did go on to get a heart. Those were early days of heart transplants, and he didn't live all that long. That night, I went to dinner with a couple. The man had started a family medicine program, not at Stanford. Stanford didn't like family medicine at the time, but at one of the hospitals in San Jose. And they were a very strong couple. She had helped open the first coronary care units in the country. I'm saying that to you to say they were strong in the medical world. They were scientists. They were great people, though. I mean, they probably still are. They live right around here. And I decided I would tell them the story, which was a huge mistake. I mean, just huge. Everybody at the table looked at me like I had lost my mind. Clearly, they were terrified. And I was sort of saying, no, I really mean it. I'm not kidding. He was like right here, and he was telling me. And so I felt like I had to tell the doctors. That was a very good lesson. I was never going to speak about it again. I didn't. But why am I telling you all of these stories? Because as they happened, and then many other stories, people dying, my mother dying, my sister dying, many people in and around my life for whatever reason. And I was always there with them. Somehow I always managed to be with the important people in my life as they passed. But I started knowing, really knowing, that death is not as frightening as what we've been taught to believe. I didn't know what was happening for that person. You remember I've told you the story of my sister when she was dying. She was 42. And it was like we were both in a time travel scene. I mean, now I would say we were leaving, sort of going to the astral world. Really, I mean, I actually feel that. And she would say to me, "Can you come with me?" Just like that, we'd come out of these lapses. And I would say, "Sweetie, I can't go. It's not my time to go." She said, "Please come with me." I mean, just so sweet and so serious. And I kept saying to her, "I can't go, but look where you're going. It's so beautiful." Like we both knew that we could both see where she was going. And she actually also left her body very easily. And I started realizing that whatever it was that was happening in death, it wasn't what I had been taught to believe. It wasn't some horrifying, just simply awful experience. Now, of course, it wasn't until I found Master and then I found Ananda, and all of that happened before medical school. It's how I got to medical school. So I had a lot of support in that way. I didn't have it when my sister died or when those experiences as a nurse happened. But by the time I got onto this path, it was easy for me to, I'm saying, I'm not just sharing these experiences because I had them. I'm sharing them in the hopes that even hearing somebody describe watching death after death after death, even though I myself have not yet left this body and then come back, that even hearing it, that it could bring some calm to everybody who's listening, because it's such a big topic. And I can say with all of my clients over all of these years, it is rare to find somebody who's actually there at the moment of death and not feeling afraid until I've watched the people at Ananda. A few of them, I've never even watched them, but heard the stories of them leaving their bodies. And it's different once we know the truth, once we really know the truth. And that is, quite simply, though I'll speak a little more from what Master and Swamiji have said, that nothing happens, that it's a much smaller transition than what we think, from being literally imprisoned, the soul being imprisoned in this body, to this extraordinary freedom that happens when the soul leaves the body. And I mean, Master uses that word, imprisonment, over and over. If you read through Whispers from Eternity, or many of the poems in there, or the story that he wrote that's at the very end, it's the very last thing, of course it would be, in Whispers from Eternity, and I'm just far enough away from the book that I'm not going to go get it, but it's, he calls it a young boy's, Lakshmi's bringing it to me, so I will tell you. This is absolutely beautiful. I thought what I might do with the class tonight, which I'm not doing now, but I thought for a few minutes, I should just read this. We should walk through this, but it's almost 3 pages long, and just explain it phrase by phrase or extrapolate on what Master's saying, because it's so beautiful. Please read it yourselves. It's called The Dying Youth's Divine Reply. And the the topic at the top of that's the title of what Master wrote, but it's called Conquering the Fear of Death. I discovered this years ago when Ruhi and I used to regularly teach a series on death and dying and karma and reincarnation. When I read that, it was so powerful. But if you read that or many of Master's other poems, he uses that word, imprisoned, a lot. He really tries to convey to us what it's like to take the soul, which is free, even in the astral world, which is not totally free yet, and the soul is still, it gets to confront issues on the astral plane that are certainly different than what happens here on the physical plane. But there is a fair amount of spiritual growth that can still go on and that needs to go on the astral plane. So it's not total freedom, but it's so much freer than we are here. You remember what he said about being born when he had to take a body. He said he remembers it was like putting on a heavy winter coat on a hot day. And you can just feel the heaviness of that. A word that's used very frequently in all of his writing is encasement. And he uses that word because whether it's a physical body or the astral body, different, but still the soul is confined. I've always thought of it like compressed air. You know, we can compress air to such a huge degree. You can get a little air compressor, tiny little air compressor, and fill it and compress air. And if you tag those molecules and you let it go, it doesn't go to infinity, but in colorful images of it, it looks that way. So it's this tiny containment of something that is so vast. So we think of it as leaving this which is wonderful and going to that which is, of course, unknown, terrifying. We fight it as much as we can, when in fact, that is exactly the moment where we can begin to experience our soul's true and truly expansive and expanded nature. And I've seen it now. I mean, it's an odd thing to say, but I've seen the joy. I've heard it in people's communication. It's not quite a voice, or in an eye of a man, his soul up in the corner of a room winking at me, so joyful. And we're afraid of that. And it's just helped me see, and I hope even these few little stories can help you see there's nothing to be afraid of. However, not even however, period. Let me just say it, period. But one of the things that Master and Swamiji talk about so much, and no matter what of their writings or their talks or teachings you pull up on death and dying, honestly, it comes down to these simple lessons that we've already learned, except I hope that we can hold it in that other knowing that where we're going is so much, will give us such a sense of freedom and joy. We cannot know it here except in brief moments of deep, deep meditation. There is no other way. You know, this image just came to mind, so I'll share it with you. Years ago, many years ago, I had a friend who went and I've told this story before, but she visited somewhere in Florida. I think it was on the west coast of Florida. And in a town, a certain town, it was so long ago now I don't remember the name of the town. And she came back and she said to me, Shanti, you have to go there. It's fabulous. It's so beautiful. You're going to love it. She went on and on. So the next time I was in Florida, I went there. And not only was it not fabulous, but I kept looking and looking. I kept thinking, what was she seeing? I kept being sure I was missing something. When I came home, I called her. I said to her, what happened when you were down there? She said, oh, you remember I told you I met this guy. And she proceeded to tell me her story of falling in love. So I'm all by way of saying, there are those moments in life, and falling in love is one of them. Probably the birth of a child is another that's even a higher experience than this. Trying to think if I can think of any others, and quite frankly, I can't, but I'm sure there are, where your heart opens so much. Maybe now I would say getting a new puppy, but otherwise, your heart just opens and it changes the color of the landscape, and you feel everything's beautiful. Now, unfortunately, most of the time in life, whether it's falling in love, having your child, getting a puppy, it doesn't always last like that. It's not true love. It's love. It's of the human heart, love. And some of that can be transcendent in moments. I do think when you first look at your child, you go beyond a human experience for moments, weeks, months, maybe. Not after that. I mean, you love that child, but you don't live in that state of nothing in the world could go wrong or happen or irritate you ever again. No, it's not like that. And anybody whose mother's out there, you better be shaking your head that I'm telling the truth. You come back to reality. But so that can happen in human life, but it's like that. It's limited. But to know true, everlasting, ever new joy, no, that's only at a soul level. So what Swamiji and Master keep saying is literally, in other words, Master speaks the way he speaks, Swamiji does the way he does. Do everything you can do in this life to dissipate, transcend, transform your karma. Do all of what you can do, because it's only by doing that. And really, what is that? Certainly, we can say doing good deeds. We could speak in many ways about trying to live right, perfectly in tune with the yamas and niyamas. These are all great things to do. But in the end, because all of those, as we think about them, are going to involve the human mind and the human heart. And as long as that's where we are moving from, we're limited. It's limiting. The human heart's limiting. The human mind is certainly limiting. We're limited in this very body. To have these transcendent experiences, we actually leave the body. And we leave the body by controlling the breath. So only when breath is completely controlled, when the heart is stilled, when all of our likes and dislikes and our desires are calmed, no waves. We've quit that ride on the waves of the ups and the downs of life, of everything in life, not even just of the human experience. And I think, in a way, the human experience is about the best of it, because we at least, particularly once we've come this far, we can begin to exert an energy where we're making effort to go from this to this to this. And that is what we need to do. So whatever they say here, whatever they say anywhere, it's all about destroying, overcoming our karma. Master says it so beautifully. I just looked over at one of my notes, and he says, identify the prodigal soul. The prodigal soul, I love that, maybe because we just talked about the prodigal son, and it makes so much sense right now, that which takes off from its home. But to use this life to identify the prodigal soul by destroying, or I don't like the word destroying, though I'm sure that's what he said because I have it there, but by overcoming our karma, by making the effort. This is why meditation is so important, to bring that prodigal soul back to that state of omnipresence. And it's only then, it's only there that we can know that there is no such thing as death. It's only when we're there that we will no longer die. Until then, as Krishna says in the Gita, we have to keep dying. We have to keep being reborn. That's not the bad news, because the great news about that is that each body becomes the perfect vehicle, the perfect vehicle. We choose it that way from the astral plane. We actually choose this life, everybody in this life, this particular body, because the soul knows I can make great progress if I choose to by being in exactly this situation. That's why it's so silly to ever bemoan what we would call our fate or our issues in life. We all do it, and we can do it. But I will tell you for sure, again, this I know, that the more we grow spiritually, the closer we get to minimizing that period of time, those feelings, when we complain, when we whine, when we think for even a moment things are not as they should be, doesn't mean it's easy. Believe me, I can say it. I was thinking about it today. You know, it's interesting. I've just had a series of Zoom or FaceTime calls with people in Ananda from different communities, people just wanting to talk. And of course, the first question we ask each other is, how are you? And then I always think, how am I? I'm always the same. Nothing changes with how I am. Life changes. And that's what I've come to see. I could always say, I'm great. That's how I feel. I mean, I hurt my knee today. Okay, I hurt my knee today. It's going to mean what it's going to mean. I got a new puppy. The puppy's keeping me up all night. He's keeping my husband up all night, which puts him in a bad mood, which increases demands. Now I have my life plus the puppy. All these things, they sound silly, don't they? But they're hard. It's challenging. I did not need to add one more thing or experience or being to take care of in this life. I didn't. And all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, look at this. Somebody just handed me a toddler. I'm 74 years old. I don't want a toddler. That's how it feels. But instead, to be able to say, wow, somebody handed me a toddler. No mistake. Okay, sweetie, what do you have to teach me? So it's challenging, but it's way less challenging when we say, I'm going to look this head on. I'm going to look it right in the eye. I'm going to say, what bit of my karma can I transcend by taking on this experience, this feeling, this person that just came into my life, this whatever. Say whatever, because, boy, we get closer and closer to the absolute to understanding, knowing, deeper than understanding, when Master says every experience in life is neutral. Every experience. It's what we do with it that matters. And it's what we do with it that matters, because our soul can continue taking its journey. And it is exactly that journey that helps us overcome the fear of death. There's not much else. There is this kind of knowing and conditioning that I've had that I wanted to share with you. Now, who knows? I was thinking earlier, because I've been living with this topic all day, I was saying to myself, and I say it to people all the time, I don't feel afraid to die. I really cannot find anything in me that feels afraid of dying. And then I thought to myself, well, you know, because Lakshmi and Sai Ganesh are always here with me when I do these secrets classes, Sai Ganesh and Lakshmi are probably going to be right at my side when I die. I mean, they actually, unless I'm killed in some car accident, they probably will be. By the way, Master says if you die suddenly and you've been consciously on a spiritual path, you will feel no pain at all, nothing. And what he says about dying, this also really helped me. So I wanted to make sure I shared this with you, then I'll stop. He describes very clearly somewhere, I don't know where I pulled it up from, but if you wanted me to, I could email it to you, write to me if you wanted. I could just scan it in and send it to you. But he goes through like 8 important things about the dying process. The first thing he says is, you begin to feel numb in your arms and your legs. He says it's almost like when your body falls asleep, but it's a deeper state, and you begin to realize that you can't move. You feel that heaviness. Anyway, he talks about a few steps. Then he says, when your heart stops and you're not breathing, he said, you feel like you're suffocating. He said, that is what's very hard. And that is what the soul remembers. And when you're reincarnated, and of course the same soul comes back, it remembers those moments of feeling like you're suffocating, which is why we're afraid of death. That's what he says. That's the bad news. The good news, he says it lasts no more than 3 seconds. Isn't that amazing? That's the only hard part of leaving the body. And Master says, in his words, it's the only hard part of leaving the body. Being in the body, depending, you might be in pain. You know, if you have congestive heart failure, you might be short of breath. That's not what we're talking about. 3 seconds. I thought to myself, I can do anything for 3 seconds. Anything. We all can. It was the next very freeing thing for me. It's like, it's really not bad leaving the body. And I personally, and I suggest you all do it, let's commit ourselves to fighting with the ego in those last moments and just say, no, this isn't hard. Because he says after those 3 seconds, you feel you are aware of your soul expanding and knowing a kind of a freedom that you never thought possible in this human form. And B, he said, the deepest state of rest. He said it's deeper and more nourishing than any night's sleep that you've ever had. He describes it like this. It sounds like, wow, almost, I don't want to say I can't wait, because I'm not sure I feel that, but it feels that way. Maybe in a way I can't wait. Just that sense of getting, again, out of these, now I forget the word I said that he uses, not imprisonment, but what he calls these bodies, whether it's a physical or an astral body, but these confining encasements. That's the word. And I think, we are stuck here. And the more we read and know, and more than anything, the more we meditate, so the deeper we go in our meditations, and the closer to that sense of freedom we ourselves go, then that fear just diminishes and diminishes. Now, I was saying, and I will finish with this thought, Lakshmi and Sai Ganesh are probably going to be there. Lakshmi has to be by my side. Sai Ganesh is going to be singing me out of here. So I have to write this all down, but they're here and they're hearing it now. So believe me, they wouldn't let themselves be anywhere else. Or Millie, you're invited too because you are such a great soul. I mean it. We want people like this, high souls around us, people who are willing to not just let us go, but to help us go, to see us on our way. So I really hope just hearing these few stories, these few words of Master, take it in, drink it in, let it allow you to even try on being just a little less afraid of leaving whenever it is, because we only leave when we've made as much spiritual progress as we can in these bodies. We won't be taken any sooner than that. So that's the good news. It's sort of all the good news. Barry said to me once, my husband/partner said to me, he said, could you please be a little more invested in living? I said to him, what do you mean? He said, you feel so easy about dying. I don't really want you to slip away that easily. Really scared him that I wouldn't fight enough to live. Well, I'll do what I need to do to live as long as I feel I can keep serving. That I feel. As long as I feel I can keep serving anyone. Otherwise, it just feels like it gets better. And both when we leave these bodies, and hopefully for all of us, when we come back, we're that much further along. We may need to repeat a few steps at the beginning, but all of the ways that we've changed that pattern in our astral spine, which is a lot for all of us who are practicing Kriya, all of us who are meditating, we've made great progress, and we don't lose that progress. So we come back, we're just that much closer to freedom in God. So there's not that many of us here tonight, but this is our last evening together for this course. Of course, you all know that the entire course has been or will be put up on Mighty Networks. If it's not there yet, it will go up soon. Lakshmi has a bit of editing to do, but it'll start going up now that it's over. Does anybody have any comments or questions before we close for this last night? Kushi, are you good, honey? I can't. Okay. All right, great souls. I thought Kushi was asking her mom, Kushveer, who's there with her, who I see. Hello. Hi, Kushveer. Good to see you, dear. Yeah. All right, everybody. This has been a true joy. We will be, just to let you know, Lakshmi and I will be starting a 12-week series every other Sunday evening in January. On the yamas and niyamas, we're going to try and expand our understanding and bring them into everyday life. And I will be probably in February or so starting a series like this, 1 hour every other week on the essentials on the spiritual path. I did a 3-week class on it, and there was so much more to talk about that we'll be covering it probably over the course of a year. So I look forward to spending that time with as many of you who care to join us then, and I will see all of you long before then. So please come and be with us. These evenings of the 12 nights of Christmas have been really wonderful if you've been watching them at all. The first one was the lighting of the Christmas tree. You couldn't watch it, but the next night on the saints, and then last night, Asha's talk, Christmas with Swamiji. Next week I'll be doing one on Christmas with Master. So come to the temple if you'd like. We'd love to have you here, or join online. All right, great souls, thank you, and bless you all.